Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Heather and I'm the owner, creator, and coach for Believe in Better Finances. So for today's video topic, I wanted to talk with you all about saving for your child's college education. I think this is something that most parents in today's time really advocates, is to have their kids go off to college and, do better than they did and get great jobs and have a lot of options and opportunities in life. But I think past that, I think a lot of people struggle with being able to save for their child's education or knowing where to put that money. And so with that, I thought I would spend a little bit of time talking about some different avenues that you can go about putting money aside for college savings and some of the pros and cons, because there are a few options. Just kind of as a quick disclaimer, these options can vary slightly from state to state, so it is very important that after you watch this video is to, one, take action, do some research on your own, reach out to a certified financial planner to find out a little bit more information, and then that way too you'll know the more specifics about how each plan is going to work in your particular state. So why is college or saving for college important? Well, I think the reasons are pretty obvious, but I think number one, education pays. I think, do you have to have college degrees or a degree to be successful and to make money? Absolutely not. I mean, that's just my personal opinion, but I know a lot of people who do not have anything above a high school diploma and do very, very well in life. Many are entrepreneurs. Many take different types of jobs that don't require a degree, such as maybe a police officer or fireman. Now, some of those do hire based on that. But for example, I have earned my associate's, my bachelor's, and my master's degree. My husband, on the other hand, does not have an official college degree. He has some college credit hours, but within his type of job, he does very, very well, income-wise and things like that. And, again, he doesn't have a degree. He didn't spend 8 years in school like I did. But nonetheless, for most people, education really does pay. In my particular situation, I work in a business environment, and I knew in order for me to grow and promote, I would find a college degree an asset as well as would my employer. And so that was the decision I made, was to get advanced training and education in order to, follow my career path, my career dreams and things like that. So education pays. Also, the rising cost of education itself is a reason that you want to start setting money aside for college. So maybe your child is 2 or 3 years old now, but in the next 18 years, what is college expenses and tuition and things like that going to look like? More than likely, just kind of being a little bit of a pessimist, it's going to be a lot higher. Hopefully not, but just the way the trends have shown, the increase of college, the costs, it's going to continue to go that direction. Even just saving a little bit of money can go a long way over the long run. And then also, just again, kind of the obvious thing is, if you can help save money now, that can really reduce or maybe eliminate the need for student loan debt when it comes to your child and going off to school. So those are just a few reasons of why I would say it's so important as a parent, if you can, to contribute to your child's college education. Now, all that to be said, I was able to go, like I mentioned, and get my degrees, and I had zero. I think my parents bought me a few books, but overall, it wasn't something, I think, when I was born back in the 80s, college just wasn't quite as necessary or as popular as it is today. Pretty much everybody in high school that I talk to, they're like thinking about college or whether or not they want to go to college, but at least the topic of college is on their mind. And I just don't think that, back in my time, my parents really thought about that as an option for me. On top of me being, a girl, I think they just thought more traditional routes, like get married, have children, maybe have a day job, something like that. But the need for college, it just wasn't something that really came up on their radar. So, and I'm not mad about that. I'm just saying that's just kind of how my situation was. So, obviously I was able to go to school and things like that. But I didn't have any money saved, so it doesn't mean that your children still can't go to college if you can't put any money aside or don't want to put any money aside. It's still possible. But again, for those of you who, like me, eventually whenever I have children, I would love to be able to give that gift of education without little burden on their shoulders. these are some ways that you can go about saving money for college and having different advantages in doing so. So with that disclaimer, please keep in mind that these options that I'm about to mention, there's going to be 4 of them. Each of these options can look slightly different from state to state. So it's definitely important that after you watch this video that you do your own research. So after you hear some of these terminologies that I'm going to throw out there, go out and Google them and learn a little bit more about them yourself beyond this short video. Go talk to somebody. Usually you want to speak to a certified financial planner. And I know for a lot of people you might be thinking, oh, that sounds intimidating. I don't want to feel embarrassed or feel like I'm asking stupid questions. Don't feel like that. You know, make your list of questions, of things, or maybe just go in and say, I don't know anything about this subject. I just know I want to save and better my child's future. So what are the options? You know, go at it like that and don't feel embarrassed or ashamed just because it's, you know, a certified financial planner or something like that. Essentially, these are all just accounts, just like you would go into a bank and open a bank account. These are just specific accounts that are set aside or set up for the purposes of college savings. So don't feel like it's an intimidating thing. I think for most parents, they want to be able to send their kids to college, but when it comes down to actually saving for it, people either just don't, 1, or 2, they feel intimidated or embarrassed and just don't know the route in which they should be putting money aside. So that's what I'm hoping I can shed a little light on that topic for today's video. So like I said, I'm going to cover 4 different ways you can save for college. And the first one's going to be 529 plans. And again, these can vary slightly from state to state, but there are a lot of advantages to 529 plans, and each state does offer one for, you know, college savings purposes. So basically, these are tax advantage programs that help families save for college expenses. Now, again, like I said, they're going to vary differently from state to state, but there are at least 2 types of 529 plans. So there's going to be some that are called prepaid tuition plans, and then there's going to be some that's just called college savings plans. Not all states offer both types, but again, that's where you want to ask that question of, do you offer 529 plans, which the answer should be yes, and then do you offer the prepaid kind or the college savings kind? Now, in Texas, where I'm at, we do offer both types, but one of the 2 is really starting to become obsolete. The prepaid plan, and what that's called in Texas is the Texas Tomorrow's Fund. So if any Texans out there are watching, give me a shout out. But basically, the Texas Tomorrow Fund is becoming obsolete because basically what they do is they're prepaid tuition at today's tuition rates. So as we've seen the rising cost of college tuition increase, it can't keep up with inflation. So all these prepaid plans, you know, they were set here at this dollar amount, but tuition keeps going up and they're not keeping up with the inflation. So they're starting to go away with those plans just because it's starting to cost them money to offer them. And so while it's still available, it's really starting to go away. So really the most common way is going to be, you know, your college savings plans. Basically, you can use the money for various expenses. So that includes obviously your college tuition. It covers your tuition, books, room, board, and other fees associated with college expenses. So you can use it for a little bit of everything. There's no age limit, and it's open to adults as well as children. So while this video is focused on saving for your child, if you're an adult and you're thinking about maybe I want to go back one day and get my master's degree, well, if you want to start putting money aside, instead of putting it in a regular savings account and earning nothing, you could actually putting it into a 529 plan for yourself, which is really, really cool. And then again, if you don't use any of those funds, that can be passed down eventually to your children's needs. One of the things that's really great about the 529 plans is the tax benefits. So earnings can grow free from federal tax, so that's one really big pro. Withdrawals from qualified higher education expenses are free from federal tax. Tax-free compounding applies. There's a lot of flexibility, and also one of the things that's really popular about this plan is there is no income limit. So, you know, if you and your husband or you and your wife, whatever, if y'all are both working and y'all make a really great income, sometimes in different accounts, different situations, that can really prevent you from being able to invest. But in this case, whether you make, you know, $30,000, $50,000, $100,000, $300,000, it doesn't matter. There's no income limits that can prevent certain groups of people from being able to set money aside in a 529 plan. So that's one thing that's really, really cool about it. Another thing that is very, very much a pro in my mind, and I think anybody out there really thinking about it would agree, is it allows the account holder to maintain control over that account. And you might say, well, Heather, why is that important? Well, basically, once that person or that beneficiary, or in your case, your child, reaches the age of maturity, again, that could be 18 or 21, depending on your state, you still retain control of that account. So, it really eliminates the risk of that child being able to just go out and spend that money on something other than their college expenses. So 529 plans are really, really great. Again, you want to check with somebody in your state or in your area to find out a little bit more specifics. But that really is, I think, today's most common way to save money for college expenses. With that being said, though, I'm going to cover also 3 other options just so that way you know what's out there in case you hear these being offered and some of the pros and cons with those. So the next one's going to be the Coverdell ESA, and ESA is just short for Educational Savings Account. That's all it is. So as a Coverdell ESA account, basically anyone who meets the income requirements can open and contribute to an account for their child. One of the things that I don't really like about the Coverdell ESAs is basically all the funds have to be fully withdrawn by the time the beneficiary turns 30 years of age. So if for some reason your child doesn't go to school until later on in life, or maybe they go to school, they have some money left over, and then they decide, I want to go get my master's degrees, at that point they have to be, 30 or younger, otherwise that money is going to have to be subject to taxes and penalties. So I don't really like that about that option that much. So that's definitely something I would be aware of, just, again, the timing of it all. Unused funds can be rolled over to another family member. So say you save up for your child and they don't use it all, and you're like, what do I do with this extra money? Well, you could actually roll that over to another family member. So maybe a younger sibling could take that and use that towards college expenses. You could transfer it over into a niece or nephew's name. So you could have that option, which is kind of nice with the Coverdell ESAs. The third option is going to be what's called UGMA or UTMA accounts. So it's UGMA or UTMA. And basically these are custodial accounts that offer tax advantages as ways to save for college. Basically a parent, a grandparent, or just another adult can contribute money towards the benefit of, a child or somebody in the family. But the disadvantages of these type of accounts, and I think the biggest one of all, is basically whenever that beneficiary, or in this case the child, becomes the age of maturity, so depending on your state, again, that could be 18 or that could be 21. At that point, once they reach the age of maturity, that child or young adult can then take that money and spend it on whatever it is they want to spend it on. So you no longer retain that control like you do in the 529 plan. So just say, for example, if that 18-year-old decides, I don't think I'm going to go to college, so I'm going to withdraw the money and go get a Corvette instead. Well, as the original account holder, the person that opened it up, you have absolutely no control at that point to keep them from being able to do that, other than just a stern fist. But basically, from legal rights wise, that account now becomes theirs and they can choose to spend it however they see fit. So I would definitely steer clear of this option if it is offered to you. Again, ask these questions about what disadvantages come with this particular account as well as any of the other accounts, so that way you know the ins and outs of how it works very, very well. The fourth and last option is going to be traditional and Roth IRAs, and an IRA just stands for individual retirement account. So it is a retirement account in your name for your benefit. So early withdrawal penalties are waived when traditional and Roth IRAs are used to help pay for qualified post-secondary education expenses, either for yourself, for a spouse, for your children, or even your grandchildren. Traditional IRAs are subject to income tax, and only the earnings are subject to income tax when it comes to Roth IRAs. Now, a word of caution, and I think any right-minded certified financial planner would say, if you're thinking about taking money out of an IRA for college expenses for any of these reasons, any of the people that I mentioned, I would really advise against that, because again, at the end of the day, you have to keep in mind you are going to retire at some point. You are going to need this money to live out the rest of your life. And does a person need to go to college in order to be successful? Kind of like I mentioned earlier on, there are a lot of ways you can be successful in life and not necessarily have to have a college degree. But regardless of all that, we are all going to need that money to retire and live off of the remaining days of our lives. So with that being said, I would try my hardest to find other ways to see that your children or grandchildren go to college, help them with scholarships and things like that. Do whatever you can without having to tap into an IRA, just because, again, I think it's really important that you kind of, in this case, you have to really think about yourself first and make sure you're going to be taken care of, and then anything else extra that you can afford to help do, then that might be one thing. But all those covered, I think obviously the 529 is going to be probably the most beneficial, the most advantageous for you to look into. Obviously, you want to look at these options based on your state. So what I would encourage you to do is, now that I've mentioned these 4 options, you want to do a little more research on your own. So you've got the 529 plan, you've got the Coverdell ESA, you've got the UGMA or UTMA accounts, and then obviously you've got the traditional and Roth IRAs like I mentioned. The key is you want to start saving when they're young and save often as you can. So even if you're watching this video and you're like, well, my child's 13, is it too late? No, it's never too late to start saving. And maybe they're 16, 17. Well, obviously you're not going to have as much time to save, but maybe there's some other things that you can do to start putting money aside now. Maybe it's a bonus check. Maybe it's a tax refund. Maybe that teenager has a part-time job. Well, if you don't have any money saved for college, maybe between both of you, you can encourage them to use some of their paycheck to help eventually get them through school. So if they want to spend a little bit on themselves, save a little bit and things like that, maybe work with your child and just help them see, hey, we would love to help you with college, but at this point, college is 2 years away. So maybe between the two of us, it'll again reduce the need for more student loans if they can start saving between the both of you now. So again, just think through all the options based on the age of your child or your number of children in the house, and get started. So I hope you found this information interesting and beneficial. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up, and also be sure and subscribe for future videos on all things money. See you next time.